Last episode, we looked at the slash scoreboard command and the slash title command. But this episode, we're going to be looking at slash execute. Hey, you, at the black screen. So YouTube says that roughly 90% of my viewers are actually not subscribed. So if you could just go down, look at the subscribe button, just check. Just please, just scroll down right now. Before you keep watching the video, just scroll down. Check that you're subscribed. That'd really mean the world to me. We're at like 175 subscribers, I think. So I want to try and get to 200 subscribers by the end of October. I think it's doable. Anyway, onto the video. So when you type in slash execute, it comes up with a ton of different options. Each one of these options I like to call subcommands. Basically, each one of these subcommands here will change the outcome of the execute command. So let's look at the most basic execute command. That is execute run. What slash execute run will do is it will run any command that you put next. So you could say execute run say hi, and it's the exact same as just typing slash say hi. But the thing with slash execute is it will run the command as the entity that's running it, and also at the same position of the entity. So let me explain. So I've got an armor stand here. Now, if you're looking at an entity, so I'm looking at this armor stand, you can see clearly my cursor is inside its hitbox. What you can do is, you can type slash execute as, space, press space, and then you can see you've got at A, which is all players, at E, which is all entities, at P, which is the nearest player, at R, which is a random player, and at S, which is the entity that is running the command. So either like a command block or a player, etc. Then you've got all the players, but then you've also got the ID of the entity you're looking at. So if I press tab, if I say execute as this entity, run, say hi, you see the armor stand says hi. Even though I'm running this command, you've typed in here as that armor stand. So it is running this command as if the armor stand typed it. One thing that is different though, you're running this command as that entity, but you're still running it at the same spot as you. So like I am running it as that entity, but I'm still running the command at my player. So if you type, you say as that entity at S, run say hi, it doesn't do anything for the command, but it means that the command is being run by this entity and at this entity. So one of the other modifiers you can do, let's put this command away. Let's copy it and let's just put a dot there so we remember it. You can type execute if. There are 6 different subcommands here that all do different things. So if you do execute if block, you can type in coordinates. So you can either type in like actual coordinates, you can either type in coordinates like this, which are the player's coordinates right now, or what you can do, you can type the tildes, but you can also put numbers here. So you can do this with any command. So even like slash TP, you can do at S, and then you can do the relative coordinates, but then also you can add numbers to it. So I can teleport myself 56 blocks above where I'm standing, and if I stand over here, it changes it to 56 blocks above, which is pretty cool. Back to what we had before. We had this command. So the reason I went into the if is because if you do as this armor stand, like that's what I've got the ID for, if block underneath the armor stand, so that's what that is. So you've got the tildes, and then you have -1 next to this middle tilde. That's the y-axis. So that's the block beneath it. If the block is light blue concrete, run say hi. Now if you run it, it doesn't run. That's because this is what I was trying to get you to understand. That we have the as, but we don't have the at. So it's running it as this entity, but still at me. So if I stand on here, the armor stand says hi, even though I'm standing on it. But if I walk off it, it doesn't say hi. So you need to make sure that you do the as, and then at S. Now it says hi, because like I'm not on, but the armor stand is. So it's all running based on that armor stand. Right here, it says execute if block. 1 block in front of the player is air, run, say air. Now, there is 1 block in front of me as air, but it's still not saying air. That's because commands are always run from the feet of the player. That's because commands are always run from the feet of the player or entity. So what you need to do is, you need to type before the if block, because this is before it's, you need to type it before it checks for the block. So you need to type execute anchored. Now, when you type anchored, you can choose either eyes or feet. So if you choose eyes, and then if the block is air run, say air, it works. And even if you look down, it'll still say air because it's running it from your eyes. But if you say run or anchored feet, it doesn't work here because your feet, because it still depends on your head's rotation, but it's ran from your feet. So even though the block in front of my head is there, the block in front of my feet isn't. If that made any sense, but then if I look up here, it is. I'm not sure if that made much sense, but I hope it did. Let's get back to execute if. So execute if blocks. Hey, so editing Cloud here. I was just looking back over how I described how execute if blocks worked, and I realized it was very complicated. I was trying to use structure blocks to show you the area and sort of make like a visual representation. But all you really need to know about execute if blocks, you can basically detect if the blocks in a certain area are the same as the blocks in another area. And then if they are, you can run a command off of that. That's basically a simple way of explaining it. I sort of went way too in depth with it. You're probably not really going to use it much. So yeah, that's execute if blocks. Next is execute if data. Basically, each entity has MBT data that helps it basically function. So if you can do data get entity, put the ID of the thing, and you'll have all this weird text in that. I will get to this in a later video, probably. You don't need to understand this. It's pretty complicated. So after execute data, you do execute if entity. Now, the thing with if entity, so you can do if entity at S, and then you just have to choose another thing. So the thing with if entity, you can do if entity CE CloudSave, then run say hi, and it says hi, which doesn't make much sense, does it? So if you use a target selector, so if you do at S, and then if you add a square colon, I don't actually know what that's called, but if you add the square looking colon, you can check for all this stuff. So you can check if if the player has a certain advancement, how far away it is. The last two is predicate. Now, as I've said before, predicates are sort of interesting. So we're gonna get to those in a later tutorial when I do data packs and predicates. Now, if score. So what you can do is if score my player, then you can have the objective name. So as you can see here, we have some previously. So if I just go to health, you've got a ton of different options. So less than. So if my score from health is less than another player's score, it'll say hi. If it's less than or equal to another player's score, if my score is exactly equal, if it's greater than someone else, if it's greater than or equal to someone else's, or if it matches a certain number. If matches 5. So you can either do if my score matches 5, or if you want to test for another player instead of a specific number, you can just do if score at S is greater than that player's name. Another cool thing when you're doing things like if score at S, if you're doing if score, when you get a matches, if you want it to be 5 or greater, you can just type 2 dots after the number, so it'll check if it's 5 or greater. Or you can do 2 dots before and it will check if it's less than 5. Or you can do 2 dots before and it will check if it's 5 or less. Now, you can't do decimals, so you can't check if a score matches a decimal because I don't think scores have decimals. You can't use decimals in scores. Okay, so we've covered execute anchored. We've covered as at facing. We haven't been facing. So execute facing, you can check if I am facing a certain entity. With facing, if you don't want to do facing entity, you can put in a certain coordinates. And if I get eyes, and then you can check if you're facing a certain coordinate and then run, say hi. Because it's relative coordinates, I'm always facing it. Execute align is sort of really complicated, but it basically, so commands like say hi, it doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter like at the spot that you're running it, because it's like a command that's run in chat. So you don't need align X, align Y, or align Z. That's how you do it. You put in either X, Y, or Z. But it's really weird. I'm not really sure how to explain it. There'll be some videos in the description that explain execute align better, and also there'll be timestamps as well. Because I am terrible at explaining it. I don't really know how to explain it. But other than that, we have execute in, so you can choose the dimension that it's executed in. Execute positioned, so you can either do positioned as, obviously, an entity, or you can choose a certain coordinates. So execute at this certain spot. I guess you could or if I execute as this entity, run set block, let's say 5 blocks, actually 2 blocks above, set it to glass, then it sets, because it runs from the feet, it'd go 1, 2. It sets 2 blocks above this entity there. Now, you can just do execute as and at. Using positioned as isn't really useful. You can just use as and at. It's just better. It's smaller and cleaner. But positioned is better for doing positional coordinates. So if I put the block I'm looking at, so 47, 8, 159, then it gets that block and it sets 2 blocks above it to be glass, which that is good if you're obviously if you need a certain block's coordinates. Execute rotated. I'm pretty sure if I look at this entity, it'll run a command as if you were rotated the same way as this entity. So if I set block, and then if I just do 5 blocks in the direction I'm looking to glass, it executes here, but it executes as if I was rotated the same way as this armor stand. So even if I'm looking this direction, it'll execute it there because that's the same direction that armor stand. That's the same direction the armor stand is looking. So it's looking that way, so if I do that, it's like that. Now the last two is store and unless. Execute unless it's the exact same as execute if, but instead of checking if something is true, you're checking if it's basically if this isn't true. So instead of thinking as unless, you could say execute if this block, so let's say the block in front of me is not glass. So that's basically what unless is. So if the block in front of me isn't glass, set the block 5 blocks in front of you to be glass. And because it's based off of where my feet are, it's really weird when it's setting the blocks. Now, the last execute command is /execute store. This I'm going to get to in a later video because it is just really, really annoying. Not annoying, but it's just a bit complicated. So I will just leave this to another video. So yeah, that's been the /execute command. If you want to see more videos like this, please do let me know. If there's a specific command as well, I just want to point this out. If there is a specific command that you want me to showcase, I will show you how to use it. Just put it in the description and I'll use it. I've sort of just been going off what I think people would want to know how to use, commands that you probably won't know how to use. But please, if there's a specific command that you want to know how to use, put it in the description and I will do it next. Or if there's a specific block that you want to know how to use, like the structure block, then please also put that in the comments and I will do that. Just anything relating to commands, so data packs, structure blocks, anything like that. Just let me know and I will try my best to show you how to use it. Anyway, I will see you all in the next video.